Welcome to Streams of Income with self-help author Ryan Rieger. For the next hour, you'll hear proven methods for how to live the multiple income streams dream. Ryan is passionate about helping others discover their gifts and start their own business. He's published 5 books, and his courses and group coaching programs have changed the lives of thousands of students all over the world. Ryan's books include Private Label, The Easy Way, Finding Your Grace Place, and his latest, Streams of Income. And now, here's your host, Ryan Rieger.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Streams of Income radio show. I'm your host, Ryan Rieger, and today is a first. We have somebody on to talk about laundromats. We've had all kinds of business models that we've talked about on this show in the 4+ years that we've been doing this. And this is the first time I've ever talked to somebody that has started laundromats and actually has a program surrounding it. His name is Jordan Berry. He has an incredible story. He was a pastor for 15 years, and so he decided to move into business, started his very first laundromat, and it was a horrible success. It did not work well at all. They were losing money, and then he decided to buy a second one. But his story, guys, of resilience, perseverance is just so incredible that it doesn't even matter if you're interested in laundromats or not. You're going to get a lot from this episode because he just talks about what it's like to take action as an entrepreneur. He did not sit on the sidelines. He pushed through his mistakes, made them, learned from them, and now he teaches and coaches people on how to start and grow a laundromat business, or actually how to buy a laundromat business and grow it. It's so fun. I love this episode. I learned a ton from him. Here is Jordan. Jordan, welcome to Streams of Income. So glad to have you.
Hey, you know what? Thank you, Ryan, for having me on here. Super excited to be here and looking forward to having a good time with you and your hype man, Steven.
That's right. Hype man. There you go. That's what we'll call it. So Jordan, you have an awesome story. I read your one pager, which is fabulous, by the way, and excited to hear it from you personally. So tell us who you are and how you got to where you are.
Yeah. Well, so I'm in the laundromat space, and, as like a lot of kids, as I was growing up, I just dreamt of owning laundromats and
you did
washing other people's clothes. You know what I mean? Like,
right, exactly. Every boy's dream.
Yeah. Everybody. Some were the astronaut kids, and the rest of us were laundromat kids. Right?
That's right.
No. It's like one of those things where you're like, wait, where am I, and how did I get here? So I'm married. I have 2 kids. I live in Southern California. I was a youth pastor and a pastor for almost 15 years. Mm-hmm. And, got to a point in ministry where we had, my wife and I had 2 young kids. They were really young at the time. Mm-hmm. And ministry's great. I love ministry. I specifically love youth ministry, actually. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't pay very well.
Well, listen. Yes, that is true. I was not wealthy at the time.
Right.
But we did okay. We got by. My wife's a teacher and I was a youth pastor for a while there, and okay. we're fine. We're happy. But ministry is great, but it's also it can be very taxing, right? Time-wise, your hours aren't always normal hours, and you're also being kind of thrust into some of the most difficult moments of people's lives a lot, and so it can be taxing. And having young kids and working weird hours and doing international trips and all that stuff, it was time to take a break from working in ministry vocationally. And so I studied physics for 3 years, and then happened to get a job as a youth pastor in my junior year of college. And after like 3 months, I was like, yep, this is it. Right. So I stopped my physics degree, transferred schools, and did a ministry degree. So I had a ministry degree and like 15 years of ministry experience. And then what do you do in life when you don't want to do ministry as a job anymore?
Jordan, we have a lot of pastors actually listen to this too, and so I hear you about them getting burned out. Was it a large church? Was it paying you? Tell me about you don't have to go into details you don't want to talk about, but
that's fine.
Were you tell me about the church, and was it a big church? Were you bivocational, or was that your full-time thing at the time?
Yeah, so that's my full-time thing. So I worked at over those years, I worked at 4 different churches.
Okay.
Started off at a really small church and then went
Mhm.
to I'd say a medium large church in the San Francisco Bay Area,
Okay.
in Palo Alto for 8 years. And then came back down to Southern California, to a large church,
Okay.
probably kind of a mega church. And so I was
Okay.
on a pastoral team there.
Okay.
And then, so that's when I took a break.
Mm.
And then I did do 1 year of like a interim youth ministry position to
Mhm.
kind of cover a gap for another church. But really the decision to leave ministry vocationally happened that third church at that big mega church. So I was full time.
Sure. Okay.
I don't know, I think I was making $60,000 or $65,000 a year,
Mhm.
rolling in the dough. And
Especially in Southern California, that's
Oh,
not
yeah.
go very far, does it?
yeah, no, well, like I said, I mean, we were happy. We weren't struggling necessarily, but
Sure.
yeah. But money wasn't the reason to
Okay.
that I left
Yeah.
ministry.
All right. We don't have to go into all that necessarily. So you
Yeah, that's
you
fine.
you made the change, and did you go right into laundromats, or was it something else in the interim?
Well, as I was trying to figure out what to do, it was like this identity crisis a little bit, actually. And I was like, okay, listen, we've got a house here in Southern California. We've got 2 young kids and a little bit of money in the bank. And I was like, why don't we take this money? Let's go rent out our house and buy a condo on the beach in Hawaii. And we can do whatever in Hawaii, like, I don't know, sell jewelry on the beach,
Mhm.
and surf in the afternoons. I don't know, hula dance, whatever. And then, when our kids are school age, if we want to, we can come back to California and net gain condo on the beach in Hawaii. And I thought that sounded great. And my wife said we could do that, or we could buy a laundromat. And so I still do not own a condo on the beach in Hawaii to this day,
Uh-huh.
but do own laundromats. So,
Why did she come up with laundromat?
yeah, I mean, it's super out of character for my wife to suggest this, actually. But how it happened was her, if you want to follow me here. So my wife's parents had friends who had a son who worked in tech in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's working 70, 80 hours a week, making good money, but working a lot of hours. And he ended up buying a laundromat and quitting his tech job and went from working 70, 80 hours a week. And he replaced his income working 5 hours a week.
Okay.
And we were like, oh yeah, like that sounds awesome. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Did not work out that way for us, but that was the idea behind it. And so we went after it.
Your wife followed that chain? Were you guys investing entrepreneurs in anything prior to?
No. We knew nothing.
Was like, oh, this will be good for us. That's kind of a stretch.
All right, listen, the theme here is going to be how dumb I am. That's just going to be the theme of this episode, or my life, I guess. No, we had zero business experience. We had zero investing experience. I knew nothing about real estate investing. I've never read at this point Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I didn't even know the concept of cash flow. Like, I knew nothing about. I just was living my best life in ministry, ignorant about finances, essentially.
Wow.
So we didn't know, and we didn't know what we were walking into, and this is gonna play out and why it was not a great experience for us, initially, at least. But yeah, we had zero. We did not know what we were walking into, for sure.
I guess I want to put a caveat to that, because you must have had enough financial sense to have the ability to save and get to the position where you're at.
Yeah. So I mean, that's one thing that we did do well, is we saved. We paid off, all college loans, all our student loan debts, all that stuff, super fast. We went after it hard. The only debt we had was we had none for a long time. And then when we bought a house, it was a mortgage. So I mean, yes, I mean, there was some level of we weren't financially irresponsible, but we weren't savvy by any sense of the word, other than we could save money.
Oh, so you found that first laundromat. How do you find a laundromat for sale?
Well, so this was nearly a decade ago, but I did pretty much what anybody does these days when you're trying to find something. is you just go to Google and maybe even at the time Yahoo. I'm not sure. It might have been Yahoo then. And you go and you type in laundromat for sale near me, and you see what's out there.
That's awesome.
I don't think that that's the best way to do it, or at least not entirely anymore, knowing what I know now. But that's what I did, and I got connected with, found a deal that I liked, reached out to the broker. I tried to do as much research as I could, but there really wasn't anything out there at the time, about how to know if a laundromat's a good deal. How do you value a laundromat? What red flags to look for?
Your parents, friends?
Yeah. Son. Yeah. So I did. I had a couple calls with him. Great question. I did have a couple calls with him, but here's the deal is that he bought a really good laundromat the first time around, which is awesome for him, but he really didn't learn anything. I mean, you know what I mean? He kind of it fell in his lap, and he got a good deal. He got a good laundromat right away. So it's not that he wasn't helpful. He was super helpful, but he did not learn the lessons that I was about to learn. And so, some people just have to get slapped around a little bit before they learn things. Right. So that's, I am one of those people apparently.
Yeah.
I did talk with him, and he was helpful, but he only knew what he knew, which was more sort of on the operation side.
Okay. So you bought this business, and it started profiting immensely right away, right?
Yeah. So the idea behind buying the laundromat, right, is have some money coming in. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think the pro forma was like $5,000 or $6,000 net a month on this. Okay. This is a relatively small laundromat, but like $5,000 or $6,000 net, which, youth pastor salary pretty much replaces it right there.
Yes.
That was sort of the pro forma numbers. So the idea was, have cash flow coming in, very little time, commitment.
Yeah.
Doing it.
Yep.
Well, when we bought it, we pretty much, here's mistake number one, probably. I probably made mistakes before this, but big mistake number one was relying entirely on the one person aside from the seller who stood to gain from me buying the deal, which is the broker. And it just turned out that broker did not have my best interest in mind. So instead of cash flow coming in, very little time commitment, it ended up a lot of time commitment.
Wow.
And not only no cash flow coming in, we were negative money, negative a couple grand at least for
right away.
Day one.
Wow. So did they lie about the numbers, or looking back, what happened in that deal? Because obviously like $5,000 plus to -2, there's something there that wasn't your fault. Maybe you didn't do enough due diligence, but did they lie about the numbers about what was happening?
Well, listen, okay. Remember our theme. I just want you to keep our theme of me not being that smart in mind. And I know, listen, your listeners are going to be way more savvy than me. And so this is embarrassing, but I literally didn't know anything. Right. And so the broker was like, look, this is what we call in our business a zombie mat. Right. And a zombie mat's basically a rundown laundromat. And he's like, look, we know it's not making money right now. It's breaking even right now. And we're going to put new equipment in here. And so we really don't need to do any due diligence on this thing, because we already know it's not making money. It's just breaking even. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Well, when I took over, it turned out it wasn't breaking even. It was losing money already. And then I was dropping $150,000 on equipment and financing that. And so, basically I was sold the Field of Dreams business model. If you build it, they'll come. And to an extent, they did come, actually. Business almost doubled when I put in new equipment with very little effort, but I was already losing money. And then I added a loan on top of that. So I was still negative $2,000 plus a month, even after doubling business there. So punch in the gut for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. All right. So keep going from there. So you were looking at some, obviously you turned it around somehow, because you got an awesome story. I'll let you talk about what you do to fix it. You looked around and didn't find anybody to help you, so you decided to take that on your own, which I'd say is brilliant.
Yeah. Well, there's a fine line between brilliant and desperate. You know what I mean? it's a fine line, So no, but yeah, I mean, I was okay. Listen, there's a stat that floats around. Okay, my story is comically embarrassing when you just voice it out loud, right? So there's a stat that floats around out there. To this day, I don't know exactly where it comes from, but it says that 95% of laundromats are successful, and I felt like I'm standing by myself in the middle of a field, looking around, like, how am I, of all people, because I don't think of myself as somebody who can't figure things out. How am I, of all people, in the 5% of people who cannot figure this business out, no matter what? Like, I cannot figure it out. I can't figure out how to make money in this easy business. Right. And so, it was rough, man. Things got real rough, real dark on us there for a little bit. And, most of us know, like, if you're in a period where, finances are tight, or, you have money problems, well, that creates relational strain also. Right. And so my life became like this laundromat, right? It wasn't a little bit of time. It was like my entire life now, because I'm trying to figure out, how do we dig ourselves out of this hole that we've dug into? My wife, on the other hand, she was shutting down. Like, this is like, it was just too much, that $7,000+ swing on us. We're expected to be making money and having time with the family. And it was the exact opposite of that. It was it was too much.
Did you tell her, well, this is your fault for getting us into this?
Every day. No, I'm just kidding.
This was your idea, honey.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to point fingers, but I wanted to be living in Hawaii right now. But there were many nights where I was like working after closing on the stupid laundromat, trying to get this thing going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could be sitting on a beach in Hawaii right now. Like, but it got to a point, like, really, where we were having a hard time even communicating with each other, just on anything, because it was just, there was too much stress, too much tension. And I literally couldn't focus on anything except for, how do we get out of this?
Yeah.
And we handled it very differently too. My wife was like, let's just cut bait and, lick our wounds and figure something else out. And I was like, listen, I refuse to be in the 5% of people who couldn't figure this out. Like, I will not be in that. Partly that, and partly, if we're just going to be, honest here and stay on our theme, I didn't know how to get out. Like, we bought this business, we invested money in this equipment, and now I was like, well, is it going to cost me like 50 grand just to get out of this business? Like, I genuinely don't know how to get out. Like, I can't sell it for what I'm underwater on it right now. Who's going to buy it from me? It's losing money. Right. And so I didn't know how to get out either. So we bought another one. Listen, my thought process was this. We're staying on target. We're staying on theme here.
Success rate. What's the chances of getting two that are not?
Exactly. Come on. Turns out it's not the laundromats, it's the people who buy them, though, not the success rate to the laundromat. So, my thought process was like, okay, look, we've made all the mistakes now. I know everything I need to know. And so we bought another one, and, through a series of weird events, which we can go into if you want to, but the general idea is things took longer and took a weird turn on us, and we didn't make all the mistakes on the first one. There were more mistakes to be made. It's the long story short there. And so that one also did not do nearly what we thought it was going to do. Through some deception from the seller and the broker. I mean, it was ugly there too. So it did not make up for, that was the idea. It was like, let's just buy another one. It'll make up for the losses of the first one. Right. Yeah. Well, really what it did was it divided my attention and made it even more difficult.
Oh my gosh.
So that's another big mistake.
Yeah.
There, when you're in a hole, don't dig another one.
Yeah, real quick about the deception though, like obviously you can't control that. So now that you know, and maybe you'll get to this, if I was wanting to start a laundromat, are there things that I can do to look into it to make sure I catch that deception?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, listen, number one thing I would like, if me back then could have a 15-minute conversation with me now, it would save me 6 figures.
Okay.
Easy, like quick, 15 minutes. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's all it would
Got
take.
it.
So either,
I want to just jump in 2 seconds here because you said this a couple times about just you've used the word dumb, but I think I'm a hype man. You would go just reframe that to where ignorance was what it was. Because if you're saying 15 years ago you just didn't have the knowledge to now where you have the knowledge where 15 minutes would have made the difference.
Yeah.
It is just the knowledge that you're looking for. So I just want to reframe that. But I want to say that in your ignorance, the amount of action that you took, I think, is something that a lot of people miss.
Yes.
They just like down themselves a bunch. But I think there's something to be said about action. Even if through your story, taking that action and not working out, I think entrepreneurs, mostly that's what happens is they go into something, it doesn't quite turn out the way that they want. It's way down. You have to spend a lot of time, energy, and effort trying different things to figure it out. You bought another laundromat, learned another lesson. But I think that's the journey to get to where you're at now and just having the experience to where if you did meet somebody that was in that predicament, it takes a handful of minutes to fix it because of the knowledge that you've gained through all of those trials and tribulations and ups and downs.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I appreciate you saying that, but I just want to point out to everybody who's listening to this and not watching this is that Steven's just been there laughing the entire time as I'm saying this. So he's sounding real good.
I'm currently going through something very similar. We're stepping a different person.
Okay. I'll give you that.
On grapes and pie in the face and just like, oh, okay, yeah.
He's not laughing at you for sure.
Yeah. I just don't want everybody thinking he's this great guy over here who's really hyping me up while he's really laughing on camera. I'm just saying.
No, he laughs a lot. He smiles. He's a happy guy. So
yeah. Well, no. So I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, you know, and here's the thing is like I do a lot of consulting now because my goal is like, listen, nobody should ever have to learn the lessons I learned the way that I learned them. Right. I'll just tell you. Right.
Yeah.
So that's where like Laundromat resource comes in. We can talk about that later. But you know, the thing about, you know, kind of what you're saying that is it's so important. But, you know, I do all these consulting calls and people are like, you know, I've been thinking about buying a laundromat for 10 years or, you know, and same with like real estate, right? I've been thinking about buying a rental property for years and stuff. And you're like, well, why haven't you, you know? Yes. But, you know, like I have a little empathy. I have a lot of empathy actually, because of what I went through, like I would not want to go through again. I would not want anybody else to go through. And so I get like that fear of not wanting to take the action. And it's very comfortable to listen to a podcast or to watch YouTube videos or to take a course or whatever, and just like learn and not take the action. Because if you're just doing the learning, you're not going to experience the pain, right, of failing. And it's painful. And so I have a lot of empathy for that, right? However, if you have any kind of goals for your life, or if you have a desire for financial freedom, or if you have a, you know, desire to leave your 9-to-5 job, or if you want bigger and better things for your family, or you want some generational wealth, any of that stuff, right? Like if you have any kind of goals like that, you cannot get there without taking the action. Right. And so your number one goal, if you haven't done anything yet, is take the first step. Like it's going to be scary. And guess what? There's going to be pain, you know, coming down the pipeline. It's going to happen. It happens to everybody, right? It's like a rite of passage almost for anybody who's successful. You've got to experience some failure and some pain. However, you can persevere through that. There is another side, you know, after that, and you will be a different person. Like I'm a different person than I was, like almost weirdly a different person, right? But it's because of what I've gone through the fire, right? Like you've been refined, right? And you've learned lessons that are so valuable, lessons that, you know, you can't get almost any other way. And so you got to find a way to take that first action step and not be afraid of failing, because even if you do fail, or even when you do fail, or if, right, like that's not the end of the story, right? It's just a step in the process. That's so I love that you brought that up.
You're still a preacher, Jordan. That's so true. I mean, that's a really good word, honestly. Thank you. Yeah. So now you got two laundromats now, and they're both not doing so well.
Yeah. So that second one was it was a seller finance deal, off market seller finance deal with the real estate. Okay. And honestly, I mean, having the real estate with it made the deal much more palatable than if it would have just been the laundromat. And, essentially the seller, all of this is on me. Like, this is, everything I'm saying. Yes, there's people that lied to me and all that stuff, right? But it's all on me, ultimately. So I'm not trying to blame the seller in this, but the seller basically covered over the fact there was a brand new large one being built half a mile away that was going to offer free dry and all these promotions. And it opened the day that I took over. And because of how the process of due diligence and all that played out, I didn't know, because I did all my due diligence on the front end and then things got stretched out. And so I didn't know. I should have done it again, but I know that now.
Can I just add timeline? Yeah. How long did it take you to purchase that first one? How long did you own that first one before purchasing the second?
All right. Well, we're staying on brand here, staying on theme. So the first one took probably 3 months or 4 months or so. I mean, this is like almost a decade ago. So this is ballparking. I want to say 3 to 5 months, somewhere in there, from when we first started looking to when we actually bought it. To buy the second one, I want to say we were like 7 or 8 months into the first one. So we were not even like halfway to daylight on that first one in terms of coming to the break-even point. We still had a long way to go.
Starting to turn around? Is that why you were looking for another?
Well, I wasn't looking for another. The deal just got brought to me. And so, I mean, one thing that happens, and this is like true in real estate, this is true if you're buying a laundromat or any other kind of business, is after you buy your first one,
get in the game.
Opportunities open up to you. You don't even have to be good. Like, I was like, I kind of half joke, but I kind of also maybe think that I was like the world's worst laundromat owner. Like, at that point, like there could not have been anybody worse than me. But it almost doesn't matter, right? Like, if you get in the game and you get that first deal, then people are like, oh, you own laundromats. Like, oh, here's a deal I found. Or like, you own laundromats. Sure, we'll give you 100% financing on equipment. You're a laundromat owner. You got to know what you're doing. Everybody succeeds in this business, right? Like, and I'm like, yeah, totally. Yeah. So I don't, like 7 or 8 months, I think, is from when we bought our first one to when we bought the second one.
And that was brought to you?
That was brought to me through a broker who had it's basically a pocket listing, essentially, and then seller finance both on the laundromat and on the property.
Wow. Awesome. All right, so you got those two now, and then so what point do you start getting desperate for help and you start your own online resource?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm desperate for help basically day 3 when I realized. Well, actually, day 1, a funny story. Day 1, first day in there, walking into the laundromat by myself, and I walk in, and there is a woman doing her laundry there. She's doing all of her laundry, like all of it. Like, she was completely naked, doing all of her laundry.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what did I do? Where am I now? What happened to my life?
Gosh.
And so pretty much after that, I'm like, okay, somebody needs to, I feel like some things were left out here. But yeah, I mean, that desperation mode kicked in pretty much right away. But I mean, I didn't start doing like Laundromat Resource or any of that stuff for a while still, because I was figuring things out. Right. And I was desperately like trying to say anybody who could help me. And I could not find, there was really no online resources there. A lot of owners, this industry has this is shifting, which I'm super happy about, but had very closed mindset there. And so owners just didn't want to help other owners. So it wasn't until I was probably 5 years into the journey, maybe even 6 years into the journey, until I was like, hey, now I have some very expensive lessons that I've learned. And I've started hearing some other stories, particularly about the broker that I worked with, but also other people in the industry who've had similar experiences, or maybe not quite as bad, but similar experiences. And so I just started a little blog to share, like, hey, here's how you buy a laundromat and how you value it. Right. Like,
yeah.
And that turned into a YouTube channel, because writing's really difficult, takes a long time. And then I was like, you know what? If I really want to be good myself and help other people be good, I should talk to the people who are really good in this industry, who are already killing it. And so that's where the podcast came in, where I interview owners and industry professionals there.
My gosh. And now you got 19,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel, 19,300. That's
Is that where we're at right now?
That's what it says. I'm on there right now. Laundromat Resource is the channel, at Laundromat Resource. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's awesome. And the podcast is great. Like, it's just kind of funny to have like a laundromat podcast. It's so weird, right? But it's been awesome. The podcast has grown incredibly. It's a top 1% in the nation.
That's incredible. Well, it's because you're so niche down. There's probably hardly any competition. Like, you are the laundromat guy.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think like 6 or 7 of the guests that I've had on the podcast have spun off their own laundromat podcast. Now there's quite a few of them.
Okay.
Which I think is great.
Sure.
I think it's great because there's been such a drought for information and knowledge and sharing that you almost can't water the industry enough with some of this nourishment here, because there just hasn't been any. How many
laundromats do you personally own now?
Well, it's a funny question because you're hitting me at a very funny time in my journey where I've actually been selling off laundromats. So I'm down to 1 right now, with the goal of actually building up a huge portfolio of laundromats. But in order to do that, number one, I need to extract myself from the operations of these laundromats. And, the goal is to probably raise some capital and go after it big.
Tell us what's an example, like somebody listening that wants to own. I want to definitely talk about Laundromat Resource and the services you offer there. Tell us about the finances of a laundromat. What would be, if you're in the 95% that are successful, if that's a true stat, which sounds amazing, that's like, if that's really true, that's incredible. Even if it was 75%, that's a good number.
That's probably a more accurate. Well, it's probably higher than I would, if I was to guess. I'd say it's probably higher than 75, but lower than 95.
Okay. So if you're talking to somebody like, I'm interested, give me an idea of like how much it would, I know it varies widely. You're in Southern California, so it may be more expensive than it would be in some small town in middle America. But what are some of the finances? How much would somebody expect to make owning one? And what kind of work, how much time is involved?
Yeah. So here's what I love about laundromats. Okay. So I have real estate. I've got commercial real estate. I've got residential real estate. I love real estate. And actually I got kind of hooked on real estate working on my laundromat, where I started listening to podcasts while I was working on stuff. And, that's where I was sort of introduced to the concept of, financial freedom through real estate investing, which I think is great. However, when we talk financial freedom and we talk like leaving your 9-to-5 job, we're talking cash flow, right? That's what we need in order to achieve that freedom and leave your job if that's your goal. And the thing about real estate is the average real estate deal cannot touch the average laundromat deal when it comes to cash flow. Okay. And so there was some point along the journey where I was like, oh man, like I actually accidentally stumbled into a much faster way to replace your income than real estate. And so my sort of philosophy for myself, and sort of what I recommend to a lot of people, is go buy something like a laundromat first to get that cash flow. If your goal is to like leave your 9-to-5 job or have that financial freedom or the, quote unquote FU money or whatever, like go get that in a business like a laundromat that's not going to require all your time, but do it the right way, which we can talk about. But, do that, because for a laundromat, for example, if you're going to buy a real estate for cash flow, right? Maybe you're going to get like a 10% return on your money with real estate. That's pretty hard to find right now. Even, I mean, you can find that. You can find a little more than that, but maybe like an average deal, we'll call it 10%, right? Yeah. But for a laundromat, I mean, you're looking at a 20 to 25% return on your investment. And that's a base hit deal, and that's unleveraged. That's without a loan. So if you bought it all cash, you're looking at 20 to 25%. Wow. And then obviously if you leverage appropriately with a loan, I mean, those numbers can go up from there, 35, 50+% sometimes.
Wow. What's an average laundromat cost? I know it's going to vary widely, but what would you expect somebody to pay for one?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's laundromats that you can buy for $50,000, and there's laundromats that you can buy for 7 figures plus.
Okay.
So I think a better way to approach it, I mean, I can throw you like a ballpark average, maybe like 350 to 400,000 if, if I had to kind of pin it down for an average. But I think a better way to approach it is actually to kind of back into that valuation and say, okay, well, what's my income number need to be, right? And if you need $10,000 a month, then you can back into a valuation just by utilizing, the way that you value a laundromat, which is based on the net income, right? So, or going back to our theme, let's say you need $100,000 a year just to make it easier.
Yeah.
Right. So, in order to value a laundromat, you take your net income and then you apply a multiple to it. And that multiple, it used to be maybe 18 months to 2 years ago, used to be on average 3.5 to 5 times the net income. Okay. Now we're seeing a shift up a little bit. So I call it more like 4 to 5.5 times.
Wow.
Multiple. So, if you need $100,000 of net income, then, you need a laundromat somewhere between, $400,000 to $550,000 probably, for that. But what's so great about laundromats is, I started doing the math on the real estate when I was listening to these podcasts, and they're like, yeah, you can get like $200 a door. And then I was like, oh, awesome. Wait a second. That's like a lot of doors I need to replace my income. And I'm a youth pastor. Like that's a lot, and then, I started realizing like you really only need 1 to maybe 3 laundromats to replace probably 99% of America's salary, right?
Yeah.
Is you can replace that income with 1 to 3 laundromats.
Yes.
So you can see where it can get really, really exciting really quickly if your goal is that financial freedom number. And then, when it comes to time investment, listen, it's not passive. And, I always say, like, listen, if you're dealing with people or you're dealing with machines, you're going to have problems, and laundromats have a lot of both, right? So problems come up, and it's a business to manage. But if you look on like a scale of completely passive to completely active, definitely laundromats definitely can be on the passive, far on the passive side of things. So, just to kind of give a ballpark, if you're buying a self-serve laundromat, where people come in and do their laundry at your laundromat, what you think of for a laundromat, usually you're looking at maybe 5 to maybe 10 hours a week, to manage that business. That number can get bigger if you want it to, or if you start adding services like a pickup and delivery, while you're scaling that up. But then also you can get to a scale even on the service side of things to where now you can add another level of management there. And so your time actually can go back down again, with a bigger business there. So depends on how you set it up and all that. But, I'd say 5 to maybe 10 hours is what you're looking at.
What do you do with that? What's those 5 to 10 hours? What are the tasks for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a little bit, so still today, most laundromats, I would say, are still cash-based coin laundromats. We finally are starting to jump on board with digital payment options, which, we're like a sloth riding a tortoise walking through molasses,
Right.
like it's what we do, technologically speaking. But over the last like 2 years, we've adopted a lot more technology probably than we have for 5 decades combined before that. So we're starting to catch up here. But still most laundromats are coin based. So a big chunk of that time is you collecting and counting coins.
Wow.
Don't count them by hand, use like a scale or a counter, but you're doing that. If you have like employees there or like a cleaner, you're managing that employee, making sure they're doing the things that they're supposed to do. You're either fixing machines or you're coordinating with a mechanic to make sure they're coming in to fix machines that go down, because machines do go down. You're handling any issues that come up, like, people put like a bent quarter in the machine, and then
Mm,
they've put in like $4 already, and then they put a bent quarter in, and then they can't put anything else in. It's stuck in there. And so you're handling stuff like that. Or ideally you're setting it up to where you have somebody who's handling those kind of issues for you.
yes.
Some people choose to repair or clean their own laundromat. And so that can add more time, to your schedule. But those are the kinds of things you're doing. And then there's, keeping books, which you should do, which we're not traditionally good at in our industry. Maybe doing some marketing or hiring a marketing company, depending on the size of your laundromat.
Interesting. Wow. This is cool. So cool, Jordan. We never had anybody to talk about a laundromat before on my podcast. So this is fun. I could get all kinds of questions. I could talk for hours just thinking through, ideas or whatever. But tell us about Laundromat Resource, what you guys do and what that looks like, how somebody can get involved with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, this Laundromat Resource, like I said, it evolved out of the darkness, the depths, right? The hole that I dug next to the other hole that I dug, that I was kind of trading my time sitting in each of those holes. I had like a tunnel between the two holes so I could go back and forth, without coming up for air. But it came out of that, right? And it was just like, listen, this business can be great, but it is a cash business still mostly. And so with that comes a lot of gotchas. There's a lot of like, if you don't know, then you don't know, and you probably don't know to know, right? And so that's what Laundromat Resource was birthed out of. And so that turned into, we've got a blog where there's tons of information there. We've got the YouTube channel, obviously, where we've got tons of information there on how to buy a laundromat or what to look for. There's tons of videos on from interviews of people in the industry, other owners, other people in the industry, that are just sharing their successes, their failures, lessons that they've learned.
Yeah.
And then obviously the podcast there. We've got a free course that's how to buy your first laundromat, and it's 3 lessons long. It's going to give you all the basics you need on how to find a laundromat, how to value a laundromat, and then how to do due diligence on that laundromat. And then we've got a much more comprehensive course on how to buy a laundromat that has a lot more detail involved in it, and also has like all the tools and resources you need also to do that. So, there's a ton of stuff over there at laundromatresource.com that you can check out, or just Google Laundromat Resource. We're all over the place.
That's so cool. Yeah, guys, go to laundromatresource.com. I feel like we need a couple minutes afterwards just to kind of hang out with you outside of recording. Jordan, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience about just your journey, or you dropped a bunch of awesome knowledge about just business, and even if you have no interest in laundromats, like this has been helpful just to hear your story, the ups and the downs, and your perseverance and your taking action, even when you didn't understand what you were doing. You are a quintessential entrepreneur. You're taking action even when you didn't have all the knowledge, and you had some bumps and bruises, and everybody that's an entrepreneur can understand all that and identify with that. So this has been helpful.
Yeah, thanks. No, I would just probably leave it with this. Like, there's the way that I learn things, and you can learn things that way. But I would just say, listen, whatever it is that you're trying to get into, real estate investing. You guys are here sharing this information on how to invest or how to buy businesses, all this stuff, right? You guys are here doing that, right? And you have so much knowledge and stuff, to give to people too. So, whatever you're trying to get into, especially if you're at that point where you're like trying to take that first step, and it's hard. Like, I don't want to minimize like how hard taking that first step is, but that first step gets a lot easier if you're doing it with somebody who's already done it.
Yes.
Right. And so skip all the headaches, skip all of the pain of learning, and just borrow other people's pain and experience. Right. And, reach out to these guys, or anybody who, comes on the podcast, or anybody who's in the space that you're trying to get into, and just shortcut all of those learning experiences. And you're going to go so much farther, so much faster by doing that. And I just wish that's like my one big, like, if I could go back and do something different, the one thing that I would do different is just shortcut all of the pain that I went through,
Yes.
and like, don't get into the business until I find somebody who's willing to help me get into it the right way the first time. Because really, I mean, if you're getting like 20 to 25% return on your money, sky's the limit. If you get one base hit deal, like you can just roll that into whatever more real estate or another laundromat or like whatever you want to do at that point. And once you hit that financial freedom number, the world opens up to you, right? You have a lot more options. And so do it right the first time, borrow other people's experience and knowledge, and shortcut the pain.
That's good. Great advice. Guys, go to laundromatresource.com. Jordan, thanks so much for being on with us, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been great.
You've been listening to Streams of Income with self-help author Ryan Rieger. From right here in the Dallas Metroplex, Ryan teaches several entrepreneurial courses and group coaching programs to students all over the world. Be sure to listen next week at the same time for Streams of Income with Ryan Rieger.